All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Grow or Preserve Wealth in an Uncertain Economy. My name is Albert of Albert's List, and I will be your host today. And with me is Robin Patan, who is a financial advisor with 8 years of experience serving clients and businesses. She specializes in creating generational wealth for clients and their families and managing stock options for professionals compensated through equity. As a certified financial planner and certified private wealth advisor, she brings her expertise to her role at Corio Advisors. Based out of here in the Bay Area, she values her client relationships and enjoys helping them achieve their financial goals. In today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about those financial goals, whether you're somebody who is currently working in a job or somebody who is currently in between jobs and looking to preserve your income. In these uncertain times when the stock market is at all-time highs and we have an election going on, it may be very natural to have a lot of questions. And Robin's going to go through some of what some of those questions may be, and then also open it up to you to use the Q&A function to ask some of the questions that you may have. This webinar is being recorded, and you're going to go ahead and get a copy of it after we're completed today. Without further ado, Robin, it's good to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and let you get started.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch into my presentation. Okay, and we're going to send out a copy of this presentation afterwards, so don't feel that you have to grab all the notes. But my name's Robin Patan. I'm a certified financial planner, certified private wealth advisor, and wealth manager by trade. I do have a YouTube channel, a LinkedIn, and a personal website, so feel free to check me out. Or if you want to get in contact with me personally, my email is just robin at my first name, last name, robinpatan.com. So who am I? I have 8 years experience as a financial advisor and a wealth manager. I work with assets under management. There are some fee-based financial advisors that work hourly. Unfortunately, I can't take clients hourly. I have to work AUM as per my company. I work for an organization, Corio Advisors, CFP, Certified Financial Planner, CPWA, and I'm currently accepting clients. I have a minimum of 800,000 of investable assets in the account. And I live in San Francisco, but my office is in Orinda, California. Okay, so let's get into it. So when you're hired at a new job, I have a lot of clients who work in technology and other fields, and they often ask me, what should they look out for when they get hired? And, I go through the list. I've worked in technology before myself, so I've been through the routine. I've also, of course, worked in finance and in wealth management. Any employment contract that you receive, I strongly suggest that you have an employment lawyer review your contract. Some of these contracts can be incredibly complicated, and a lawyer can apprise you of your rights and responsibilities as per the contract. When you negotiate, try not to just negotiate for salary, but also for provisions. For example, for people who do outside projects, maybe that you need to put in a provision to protect your intellectual property, put in special conditions for possible termination so that you're not caught off guard, outside activity provisions, et cetera. Can you back channel the company or team? Go to LinkedIn. Is there someone that can tell you the real deal of working for the company? Maybe they no longer work for the company. They worked for the company a job or two ago, but they can give you a back channel on what's going on and what it's like to work for that organization. Always have a plan going in the door for what skills and abilities or credentials you want to acquire at that company and the timeline that you want to achieve that. And I also advise people, I have clients who try to skimp on disability or healthcare through their company. Don't skimp on disability, don't skimp on healthcare. Be sure to get those provisions if they are offered to you. Okay. So next, while working, I typically tell my clients 6 to 8 months living expenses and savings. There are exceptions to that. I have some clients who are artists or work in artistic endeavors. They usually need more like a year of living expenses because their income is far less steady. But if you work a steady 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 job, 6 to 8 months living expenses, if stock is part of your compensation, whether that's an employee stock program or ISOs, NISOs, or restricted stock units, this is really the time where you need to work with an accountant or advisor. Keep your ears to the ground about any changes or layoffs that may be coming through the company. And does your company offer an outside career coach? Now, this is a really interesting one. Sometimes your company will offer you career coaching. Some companies have their own internal career coaches. I always suggest going outside of the company for a career coach because you can be more candid and more honest. If they don't make this particular benefit known, and so sometimes you have to ask about it, but paying for a career coach can be quite expensive. And if you can get the company to pick up the tab, why not? If everyone is the same age as you, this is important because I work with a lot of clients in technology. Look around your office, look around on the Zoom or the Microsoft team or wherever you are. Is everyone in the same age bracket? Is there a cutoff where there is no one above the age of X working in these positions? And if there is a cutoff, you need to take that seriously, or you need to take that under consideration. What exactly would you do if there was a major company change or layoff? Where would you want to work next? Make inroads into these organizations while you're at your current job. While you're at your current job, you should always be at least one job ahead, right? You should know where your current job leads you or where you want to go, because all of us work in professions where we never know when change is going to meet us. Okay, layoffs. So if you know a layoff is inevitable or there's layoffs in the wind, use all the benefits you can. If you can max out your 401k contributions, that would be wonderful. Dentist, eye doctor, medical doctors, submit all reimbursement receipts. You want to make sure you get your money back. Do you want to stay at the company? Can you interview with another team? I had a client who was laid off from a team at the company, and she ended up 6 weeks later finding a job in the same company on a different team. And it ended up working out beautifully because she got a severance and she got some time off, but she got to work with another team in the same company and keep all of her benefits. Can you create some verbiage for LinkedIn to let your network know that you are looking for your next opportunity? Decide how much time off you want to have in between jobs. You need to go back to work immediately, or you were looking to take some time off, whether it's 3, 6 months, 9 months, or a year off. If you know someone who's been laid off by the company before, it may be time just to reach out to them and have a conversation and talk about their experience from being laid off. So as soon as you've been laid off, review your contract. Are you due anything at layoff? Severance, ask about it. Closed mouths don't get fed. So sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. I've had clients who received severance packages or received a better severance package by asking and negotiating. Group your cash, savings account, investment account. How much cash do you have in these multiple accounts, and how long can this money last? Can you save money by going somewhere else for a few months? I have clients who get laid off and go to Mexico or go to Costa Rica or go someplace where there's just a more manageable cost of living, and they look for their next opportunity while they are in a much lower cost of living area. Debts, can you go to minimum payments for a few months? I would strongly suggest avoiding forbearance. Obamacare, don't forego medical care. Few people do COBRA nowadays because it's just so gosh darn expensive. But if you can do Obamacare, don't do without medical insurance. Apply for unemployment. A lot of people don't do this, but they really should. Are you available for Medi-Cal? Some of my clients have been laid off who work in technology, and they've stayed out for a year or year and a half due to family issues. And they discovered that they were eligible for Medi-Cal, which really helped them out. As soon as you are laid off, have a conversation with your advisor, accountant, explain the situation. Are there certain situations that you can take advantage of for working for only part of the year from tax perspective? And for some people, we use that as an opportunity to do traditional 401k, Roth 401k rollovers, or to do other things from a tax perspective that could benefit the client. Okay. So how to stabilize your money during layoff. So 6 to 8 months living expenses of savings. The money needs to be liquid and not in investments. If you don't want to sell stock, if margin is an option, and I don't say that lightly, I don't like using margin as an emergency fund. Maybe you could get away with it when interest rates were at 3%. Now my margin account interest rates are at 12%, which isn't exactly very attractive. I don't like using margin as an option for an emergency fund. Don't get overly hung up on needing to sell a stock. People will, cut their own risk before they sell a stock. They get really, really dramatic and really hung up on it, but it's like, you need the money to live, sell the stock. If you need to relocate while interviewing and commit to moving back to the Bay Area once you have a job offer, can you make this into an adventure? Go to Mexico City for a few months, learn Spanish, interview, and then come back to the Bay Area once you have an offer. Contract temporary work, of course, cut expenses, review your recurring costs, and remove whatever you're not using. Can your spouse take on expenses while you are looking for a job? And if you need money from a retirement account, you can withdraw basis from a Roth IRA account without taxes or penalties. Financial advisors really don't tell you that because we don't want people doing it. But if worse came to worse and you were down to your last and you needed to take money from a retirement account, it can be done. So layoffs are always just a tough experience that everyone endures at some point in their career. Do the best you can to financially prepare. So later in life layoffs, and when I say later in life, in technology, that can start as 40s, but it's usually people in 50s, 60s, or beyond. It may require a different strategy because ageism is real. Discrimination against people because of their age is very real. Um, what happened to the people who were laid off later in life in your company? Check them out on LinkedIn, scope them out on LinkedIn. Sometimes people who are laid off after a certain age all take a very definitive career direction. Sometimes they may go nonprofit, they may work for a smaller company, they may work for an international company. Just check out what happened to people who were laid off or left those jobs, after 50, and see what they're up to on LinkedIn. It may make more sense if you know you work in a highly ageist field and you're kind of coming to the end of the rainbow for your career age bracket. It may make sense to do the career shift yourself versus waiting for the career shift to hit you. What's really hard is the client who's in technology, everybody in their team or in their office is below 40, they're 50, they suddenly get laid off. It's a really hard position to recover from versus if they had planned their own exit at 45 and they would already be in another career. Come up with a career plan that you're excited about and confident in. What work would you want to do? What industry do you want to be in? And do you have the ability to work less and design your own career at this point? Okay. So after you find your next job, if there's a signing bonus, rebuild those savings, pay off any debts incurred during unemployment. If you're interested, can you move to a lower cost of living area and work remote and network, and always think about your next career move? Okay. Okay, so me, an advisor, how do you look for an advisor? People ask me that all the time. I'm a certified financial planner. That could be a starting point in looking for an advisor, but I will say there are many advisors who don't have the CFP designation who are outstanding advisors. If you do need an hourly advisor or assets under management advisor, really have a conversation about that. There's some clients who do well under the assets under management configuration, and then there are some clients who I think would be better served by an hourly advisor. Always talk to at least 3 different people before you hire or build a relationship. Always directly ask how an advisor is compensated. You need to know that. Ask if they are licensed and credentialed. There are some people who are calling themselves financial advisors, coaches, mentors, et cetera, that are not at all regulated or credentialed. How often does the advisor meet with clients? You need to know that. Personality certainly does matter. Don't hire someone that you don't like or that you get a bad vibe from. And always check the person out on broker check. That will tell you if the advisor has, if A, is licensed and credential, or B, has any pending matters, bankruptcies, criminal charges, investigations against them. Okay, so Albert, I think we are all good. That
Yeah,
was a lot of information very quickly.
yeah. So we're open for any questions. We want to make this conversational between any of us and all of you as you go through wherever you may be in your financial situation. I would say that most questions are fairly fair game. Um, so we do have a couple of questions here. One is there any penalties for rolling over your 401k to a Roth IRA and then withdraw?
If it's okay, so it's a little bit of a complicated question because if it's coming from a traditional 401k and it's going into a Roth IRA, it's going to be taxed, right? Because you just took something that was pre-tax and you made it post-tax. So you're going to have a pretty hefty tax bill at the end of that. Um, so I don't know if I would advise doing that because you're going to owe the IRS a whole heck of a lot of money if you do that.
Gotcha. What can you do if you see that you're well over the cutoff age? I'm not sure what cutoff age in this case means, but maybe.
So yeah, I think this must be in response to my comment about ageism. Like, you
Mhm.
know, if you're in an office and everybody is under the age of 40 and you are 55, honestly, I would look to make the transition before the transition finds me. So I would take some time while I have a job, right? And if your company pays for a career coach, an outside career coach, get your company to pay for an outside career coach and work with that career coach over the next few months to figure out what that transition will be so that when it comes, you'll be ready. Or you may decide you want to take that transition yourself. But if you're ever out of step with the people around you, that should be a signal. Whether you're much older, whether you know everybody else has credentials you don't have, the company is going in a direction that you're not in, that should be a step that a change is going to come.
Awesome. Can you explain what the term margin means?
So margin, basically, let's say you have $100,000 worth of Microsoft stock in your brokerage account. You have a need for money, but you don't want to sell your Microsoft stock. So you could go to your broker. Let's say you could go to Schwab and you could say, hey, I have $100,000 in Microsoft stock. I don't want to sell it, but I need cash. Will you let me borrow against the value of the Microsoft stock to give me cash? And if your account is set for margin, that's another thing. You have to have the account set for margin. Schwab will say, yeah, sure, we'll lend you some money, and they will lend you up to usually 50% of the account value. It's more complicated than that. I use margin with caution because margin can go sideways on people really quickly. A lot of very wealthy people use margin for a variety of reasons, but they have the assets to pay margin back in a crunch. More middle class people, I use it with extreme caution because I've seen it go really bad on people. That's
And
why I
so,
don't advise using it as an emergency fund.
and so for those who may need to use it as an emergency fund if they've been unemployed for a year to a year and a half, what are your actual, I would say, tips on what somebody should do if they've been out of work for that long?
I would say sell the dang stock, especially now since the market is at an all-time high. You know, and once again, I'm not, it's more nuanced than that. You should be working with a financial advisor if you receive company stock and this and that. But just with the bare bones that you painted me, you know, I would say, hey, just sell the stock. Don't put yourself into a margin position because the problem is I've seen margin calls, right? The value of the stock plummets. And then suddenly Schwab calls you and says, look, you have 48 hours to pay back the loan, or we're going to liquidate your position, right? And that's going to incur a whole heck of a lot of taxes. That's going to incur a whole heck of a lot of problems for the client. That's the problem with margin is that it can be called on at any point, usually when the value of the stock drops because you don't have enough collateral to cover the loan.
Um, with a finite or certain amount to invest per month, is it better to max out your 401k contributions or your Roth IRA?
This is a more nuanced question that will require working with a financial advisor. This is assuming that you know, if you have $1 million in Roth and don't have anything in traditional, or if you're in a really, really rough tax year, you know, traditional can make sense. So it's a more nuanced answer. Roth usually trumps all, you know, everything being equal. But, you know, if I see a client in a particularly terrible tax year and they need the tax break that a traditional contribution can give them, then maybe putting that money in a traditional 401k makes more sense.
And so, would it be prudent to maybe compare between the different types of investment retirement accounts that were mentioned in that question? Your 401k or your Roth IRA, which one might be better than the other, or is that also another it depends sort of
It
situation?
depends. It's a more nuanced, like I would have to have more information and look closer at the client's tax situation or earning situation to be able to really advise on that. Usually if everything being equal, Roth IRAs are the best thing, since sliced bread, but there are situations where that is not the case.
Mhm. If you absolutely need to withdraw money from a retirement account, would the tax hit for a withdrawal from a 401k be less, more, or the same as withdrawing from a Roth IRA? Would I also get the 10% penalty withdrawing from a Roth IRA before retirement age as I would be withdrawing from a 401k?
Well, this is going back to what I said in the slideshow. You can withdraw before you are 59 and a half. You can withdraw today the basis of a Roth IRA account. But here's the problem. A lot of people can't establish basis. They don't have the documentation to establish what their basis is. And the financial advisor or let's say you have a Vanguard account, may not be able to tell you what that basis is. So then you end up withdrawing basis and growth, which is taxable.
And your basis specifically is
So
like a principal or
yeah, it's the principle that you put in.
okay.
It's the principle. I don't like doing it. Like I said, I don't even tell clients that is available. If someone wants to do it, find out about it and wants to do it, they have to convince me that there's basically no other means. It's basically the option of last resort. But I do get that people sometimes get in a position where it's just there's no other accounts to draw from.
Mhm. Um, Thinking about the expenses I can control and currently living in the high cost of living San Francisco Bay Area, can you share advice or insights on sharing expenses with a housemate versus living solo in a small studio?
I can't because I mean, it depends on so many factors, right? Sometimes sharing with a roommate can be just as expensive as a studio, depending on the neighborhood that you live in. Um, Honestly, like, I Albert knows this. I bought my condo several months ago. I'm in Russian Hill. I'm locked down, in Russian Hill. If I got laid off, I would be here. I would still have this mortgage expense and everything. If I had more flexibility, I would try to, I mean, I wouldn't do it now because I'm an old woman, but if I were younger, I would try to find a roommate and I would try to find an area of the city where I was comfortable living, where it's not going to be like dodgy to come home at night or my car is not going to get broken into. And I would try to split expenses. If you want a studio, you're probably going to have to move and you still want to save money. You're probably going to have to move out from the city, and you have to make that trade-off. So without knowing more information, it's really hard to advise around that one.
Okay, gotcha. All right. No active questions at the moment, but if you have anything that you'd like to ask, we'll be here for a little longer. I
Mhm.
know that many of us have complex financial situations or even basic finance questions that we've always wanted to get answered, and we are in a safe space here. So feel free to put your questions down. I know while we're doing this for informational and entertainment purposes, Robin, well, how do you see the markets evolving over the next couple of months as we head towards our presidential election here in the United
Sure.
States?
Well, I think financial markets are waiting with bated breath for the 2024 election, but to also see if Jerome Powell, who's the chair of the federal board, actually lowers interest rates. Everyone's waiting with bated breath to see interest rates finally come down. That's usually a very positive market indicator. The reason why interest rates are so influential in my work is a lot of financial activity happens in leverage, right? You're borrowing someone's money. And when money is expensive, leverage dries up and a lot of financial activity comes to a screeching halt. So we want people to kind of loosen the spigots on the money for us to make money cheaper so that the leverage party can continue.
Yeah. When's it likely that he'll finally reduce interest rates? Something that we've been hearing for a while now.
Yeah, Jerome Powell tends to leave a lot of commentary after the meeting of the chair of the board, the federal board. He said at the beginning of the year he was going to lower interest rates 3 times in 2024. That's looking less and less likely because there's still some residual effects of inflation. So we're hoping for one interest rate cuts towards the end of the year. I could totally be wrong. Jerome Powell could totally come out this month with, interest rates cuts and, the market goes crazy. But essentially, we're hoping for at least one interest rate cut in 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. And they know that Powell had he testified before Capitol Hill today and said that the first rate cut seems to be coming soon because employment has evened out, according to him. We have
Yeah.
another question here. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's see. How do you start and determine what to get for your brokerage account? I sadly didn't work or invest in Nvidia.
Okay. Um, I have to remind myself because it's like it's second nature for me to open brokerage accounts. This is what I do for a living. And a lot of people it's complicated, right? And it's like who, where, when, what with an individual brokerage account. You can go to E-Trade and open up an individual brokerage account. I think you can do it on Schwab and you can also do it on Fidelity, opening up an individual brokerage account. And that is for investments outside of your retirement account. You can access those assets at any point, even long before you're 59 and a half. And the gains on most brokerage account are taxed at the capital gains rate, which could be anywhere from 0, 15 to 20%.
Let's see. Generally, what percentage of your take-home salary should be spent on mortgage and or rent?
It's they say what 30%, which is a fictional fairy tale. I mean, it's like what can you get on 30% of your salary in San Francisco? I mean, I just bought my place. I certainly am spending a lot more than 30% on this place. I would say honestly, 30% is the guideline. You're not going to get anything in San Francisco on 30%. Probably the upper limit of what you want to spend is about 50%. And that's going to hurt. That's 50% with making some sacrifices. That's not driving a new car. That means your student loan debts are paid. That means you don't have any credit card. That means, basically all your money is piling into the mortgage and property tax and insurance.
Yeah. Let's see. Would the state cover for Medi-Cal? Usually Medi-Cal is applicable for people above 65. Would someone who is laid off and if the age is 61, would they be eligible for medical coverage under Obamacare? And how much would that cost?
Well, I think there's a confusion between Medicare and Medi-Cal.
Mhm.
Medicare is what you get when you're over 65. If you are 61, you need to talk to a health insurance broker to see what your options are under Obamacare. I frequently have people who retire a few years earlier than 65 who just need to buy their insurance on the Obamacare exchange, right, for a few years until they can get to Medicare.
Gotcha.
Yep, Medi-Cal is for low income. So if you're in a year where you have no earnings,
Hmm.
like the technology client that I was thinking of was just in a year where he had zero earnings. He was laid off in January, and because of family issues, he wasn't going back to work anytime soon. So he was actually eligible for Medi-Cal.
Got it. Got it. All right. Any other questions, thoughts? We are on zero earnings and on Medi-Cal as well. No income equals Medi-Cal.
Mhm.
How do people saving money on grocery? How do people save money on groceries in this economy, other than buying bulk with family, friends, neighbors, batch cooking, or Ibotta?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, if you have the answer, I'd love to know that. I'd love to
Like
know
if
too.
you have the answer, can you tell me? Because my groceries are too expensive. I really don't know how people are saving money on groceries. With this recent round of inflation, everyone's kind of talking about things going back to normal, but prices are not going to drop. This is the new normal, right? This is the new normal. And for a lot of people who were kind of struggling before, it's just absolutely terrifying. Um, I would love the answer to that question. So I'm sorry, I can't I can't give a solution.
And I think a good question too, because I've been thinking about this as well, is how do you just where do you even begin to cut costs if you feel like your costs are too high, right? Because you obviously have to eat, you obviously have to pay for rent,
Right.
you obviously have to pay for insurance and things like that.
Hmm.
Is there any corner cutting that anyone can do in this economy?
Cars. I've
Cars.
seen cars take more people under than a few.
Yeah,
Um, Keep a car until the wheels come off. Get an ultra reliable brand. Get like a Toyota, a Honda, a Subaru, or something that can be on the road 10 or 15 years from now. We live in a climate where you can get away driving a car for more than 10 years. If you lived in Boston, That's just not possible. Nobody cares what you drive. We really don't care what you drive. But one of the biggest ways you can make impact in your budget is keeping a car much longer and driving something that is super reliable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see. What if you're over 65 and you have to take Medicare after a layoff? Their premium is based on the full-time salary you had 2 years ago.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do about that. It just kind of sucks. Um, I understand what you're saying, but there's no way around that.
Yeah. All right. And then any recommendations if your car is on its last legs?
Um, Patch it up and put some prosthetic legs on it and keep it going. I mean, there is a certain point where I have to tell clients to get new cars. If the car is
Mhm.
dangerous, like if the car is going to stall out in traffic, get another car. That's just an unacceptable level of risk if it's going to stall out. If a car is dangerous to drive, like if you're driving a Mazda Miata with a 2-year-old, that's just not going to work. So there's some cases where I have advised clients to get a new car, but it's in this person's either in danger or the car is just so unsuited to their lifestyle as to not be really functional anymore.
Yeah. Aside from signing up and contributing to a 401k, how did newbies choose investments within their 401k?
Okay. So this is a question for someone who has a relationship with a financial advisor. Because it's difficult. I get it. You get into a 401k, you get this list, and you're like, I don't know anything about these investments. You can try to do some research online, but reading a fact sheet about a mutual fund is like reading Greek if you don't know what all the information means. Um, Typically, even financial advisors, we're technically not supposed to advise around 401ks. But unfortunately, it's something we all experience. Even like my 401k, I got it, and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell some of the some of these funds are. I had to go look it up and figure out exactly what these funds were doing and what they are. So I can only say do some research. There are target funds. I'm not a huge fan of target funds because it's like baloney. I don't know what's in it. And you can't really pick it apart. But
Don't
for
they
some,
tell you what percentage is what in there?
they tell you the percentage, but they don't tell you what exactly it is. What fund is it? Right? Is it a Franklin
Mm-hmm.
fund? Is it an American fund? Is it this fund? Is it an ETF? It doesn't tell me as a wealth manager enough to be able to evaluate it. But for some people, it gets the job done.
Yeah. I'm an international student on an F1 visa, recently graduated from a master's degree. I am still in full-time job search with no prior work experience. What are the things that I should be worried or mindful of? Basically, any tips in finance for a beginner in life.
Okay, I'm assuming I don't know too much about visas, but I'm assuming with an F1 visa, you have intention to stay in the US and you have a US social security number and all that good stuff. Is does that sound accurate, Albert, or am I thinking of the wrong type of visa?
Uh, I think the visa for F1 just allows you to be an international student, and then you have
Ah,
to translate it to like an OPT afterwards.
got it.
But I
Okay.
think mainly the question is, after now that they've gotten their master's degree and they're in full-time job search, I think when they get their first job and their first paycheck, what are say the next three things they should do once they get that paycheck?
Sure. So open a savings account first because you have to build up your reserve first. Pay off any debt that you have. If you did manage to get a credit card or if you have some other form of debt, try to pay it off. Um, if your housing is situation, I don't know if you're living in student housing, but you may have to get your housing situation secured. So those are the three things I would tell you. Open a savings account, pay off any debt, and get secure housing.
Hmm, excellent. With the overturning of the Chevron Act and also a threat to remove the right to rent with roommates not related to you, I'm concerned if most of us can't afford rent, even if we purchased a car or van to live with, that we could also get fined for being homeless. Okay, that's not a question, that's a statement. Let's see. Why is it so hard to get a simple S&P 500 fund for your 401k and call it a day? We know that over time this works. 401ks typically do not offer those funds. Is there a way around this?
That's an excellent question. I don't know. I hear you. You also, when you're looking at 401k offerings, you also want to look at fees because some of the 401k offerings can be incredibly expensive, right? It's a good question, good suggestion. I rarely see the S&P 500 index funds in a 401k. Rarely, never.
Hmm.
The mutual fund company's got to make that money somehow, and they're making it off
Ah,
of your 401k, right?
fees, and more fees, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. This is a question that is not financial advice, but we're just going to ask it anyway. And remember, this is only an opinion, and for entertainment and informational purposes only. What are some of the international equity markets that can be considered to ETF invest into for the next decade or so? Which ETFs? Very specific.
Okay. I can't tell you that. Okay. So something that you should know about licensed financial advisors is that we cannot give recommendations or talk directly or appear to give recommendations. Like I could lose my license for doing that. There's a
Hmm.
suitability standard, meaning if we're going to talk about things or recommend or seem to recommend things, we have to do a suitability standard for each and every client before we do that. So I would love to tell you what I know, but I want to keep my job. So I can't tell you. And that's something that you should look for when you're looking up financial advice on like YouTube, because I know a lot of people really like YouTube, TikTok for financial advice. If somebody is recommending a stock or a fund or, an investment, they are not licensed. They are not licensed because if they're doing that and they are licensed, they are violating Securities and Exchange Commission rules.
What if they just say that they like the stock, kind of like what Roaring Kitty said about GameStop?
And Roaring Kitty was hauled in front of Congress and questioned about Roaring Kitty's activities. He was lucky he wasn't thrown in jail for stock manipulation, right?
Hmm.
I definitely have stock I like, but I just can't risk my entire career to
Hmm.
tell you what I like or to show you my portfolio. I can never do that. So it's sad that the people with the most knowledge can't freely share that knowledge, right? So the real deal people on YouTube are the people who are not giving stock recommendations because they can't give stock recommendations because they're regulated.
Yeah. Most wealth managers have a minimum investment amount. How do low income people get wealth management advice to pull ourselves out of poverty?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And I feel some kind of way about that. Like I said, it takes almost $1 million to sit in my seat and become my client. And that shuts off the vast majority of people who need financial advice. I would tell you this, if you can, like if someone in your circle has a great wealth manager or financial advisor, and sometimes you can, as a wealth manager, financial advisor, you take on clients as a favor to a big client. If, my biggest client came to me and said, "Hey, can you be the advisor to my daughter? She only has 25,000." Yeah, I'm going to do it because she's my biggest client, right? So sometimes if you know someone who has a good relationship with an advisor, you can get in that way. Um, if someone is new in the field, but they may not be that skilled, they often don't have minimums, right? If someone is a year in and trying to build their book of business, they may not have a hard, fast minimum to to um, to sit in their chair. There's a lot of good information on YouTube, but I always caveat that information because it's not customized, right? It's not customized. And there's good information, great information. There's terrible information on YouTube, TikTok, for people. But when I look at it, I'm a financial advisor, so I know what's going on. Like someone who doesn't know what's going on or doesn't have that much knowledge, I can totally understand where it's like it can be overwhelming or it may not be immediately apparent that someone's giving terrible advice.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
does your 800K minimum include the 401k or just liquid assets or the whole entire, I guess, comprehensive?
Well, here's the thing. If you are currently employed by a company, right, and you have a 401k with, let's say, $500,000 in it, I can't actively manage that. So I can't bring that over to myself to manage it. I do tend to work with clients as a favor on those 401ks, but it's basically assets that are with me. So even if you have like a house, a brokerage account, cars, a CD that is equivalent to 800K, it has to be what I can manage. And that's often brokerage accounts, IRA accounts from jobs that you've left before, 529 accounts, and other types of trusts and investment accounts. So that I hope that helps clarify where that 800,000 number comes from and how that's decided.
Gotcha. We have a couple of situations. So if you start a company and have had no income from the company, would you still be eligible for unemployment benefits? Usually unemployment benefits are given for 6 months and extended after the next six. Would this still be applicable?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not 100% certain. It seems to me like it would be difficult to prove revenue, right?
Hmm.
Because they want to see what what you're earning, right? And if you're not
Yeah.
earning anything from the company and you're unemployed, then what is really lost, right?
Yeah.
Because you weren't earning anything anyway. So I can't speak with 100% confidence about that, but I think it would be difficult to get unemployment based on a zero revenue company.
Gotcha. And then what if you start a solo AI company during your transition, fully funded by yourself and no income yet? Also, you've been laid off, so no income at all. How would you advise to navigate the financials of that situation?
When you say navigate the financials, what do you mean? Like you have a company that doesn't have any revenue. Um, is it a S corp? Is it a C corp? Is it like there are many nuances to that,
Hmm.
right? I would say this, if you do have a company, like let's say you start a solo AI company and you find full-time work, I would say you want to carve that out and protect that with special language in your contract. So there's not any sort of conflict of interest or the company doesn't think they own that intellectual property. Here in California, we have pretty tight intellectual property laws, but I still think you should hire an employment lawyer and carve it out with special language and be very specific about it so it doesn't come back to be a problem in the future.
Yep. What are some of the better YouTube channels with reasonably decent or good financial advice? Is this something you
Sure,
can recommend?
sure. The Money Guys, two guys, they're both CFPs. They give financial advice. The Plain Bagel, he is a CFA, certified financial analyst, who talks. But once again, they're not going to tell you what stock to invest in, but they're really solid in their financial advice. Patrick Boyle, he is in the UK. Um, he is, I believe, a hedge fund manager. He's very funny. He has like the dry British humor, and he's really good with financial advice. There is a couple, Our Rich Journey. They were two government workers, never earned over six-figure, but they retired in their early 40s because they did the FIRE movement. And now they're living in Portugal with their two daughters, and it's really inspirational. And they're really savvy with how they handle that money. And I have my own YouTube channel. It's Your Rich Auntie. So like, share, subscribe, where I talk about financial matters, and I give limited advice because, like I said, I'm very limited in what I could say.
There we go. And her
Thank you.
channel is growing, so click on it in the link below and go and watch it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Any other burning questions, desire for insights that anyone's looking for today? All right. Wow. Well, it's a good audience, good engaged audience.
Yeah, yeah, some great questions.
As we conclude here, so Robin, if you had your top three pieces of advice in general, what what would you want folks to leave here with today?
I would say savings, savings, savings. The people who really struggle are the people who are caught off guard and who don't have savings. If you can max out your retirement contributions, the sooner the better, the earlier the better. If you look at what you can do in your 20s to make yourself a millionaire in retirement versus what you can do in your 50s, there's a much narrower window of opportunity the older you get. So while you are young and unencumbered, meaning you don't have a family, a mortgage, and all that stuff, I would be maxing out any in all possible contributions to retirement. And this is a bonus. If you look in your retirement account and there's something called an after-tax account, a lot of people don't know what it is, but it's one of the most powerful tools that you can harness for retirement savings. Um, Use it if you can, if you have the excess resources to be able to use it. And you can YouTube it to find the best way to utilize an after-tax account. Um, and the third thing I would say is protect yourself. Have lawyers. I know it costs a couple of $1,000 and it's a pain in the butt to find a lawyer, but like myself, when my company was acquired, I was a partner in a company that was acquired. I had to carve out my intellectual property and say, hey, my YouTube channel, my website is mine. And, I actually had to defend that because the company wanted to come in and say, well, hey, what are you doing here? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I, called this out in my labor contract. It was right there. You negotiated and signed it. So you never know when those layers of protection will come in handy for yourself. If you have intellectual properties, if you've formed a business, do everything you can to protect it and call it out as something protected in your labor contracts.
Wonderful. And we have a couple more questions that have come
Sure.
through. So let's see. What are the benefits of moving a 401k from a former employer into a rollover IRA versus just leaving them there?
So the big thing with 401ks, oftentimes it makes sense to roll it to an IRA, but there's a few caveats. Um, if it's going to be a neglected orphan account and you're not going to pay attention to it ever again, please roll it to an IRA. I have a situation with a client in his 70s with this lost 401k that we can't find, that he forgot about, that we have to take into consideration when doing things. It would have been so much easier if he had just rolled that thing into an IRA. When I don't tell people to roll it into an IRA, you work in a particularly litigious field. Let's say you're a surgeon and at some point in your career you're going to be sued. 401k has ERISA protections, which means the government basically calls it out as a protected class of asset. So if someone sued you for doing their surgery wrong, they couldn't attack your 401k accounts, but they could attack your IRA. So for certain professions, or if someone is being sued or will be sued at some point in the indefinite future, I tell them keep it in a 401k.
Gotcha. Life insurance by term only, correct? Not whole
Yeah.
life insurance.
Yeah, I have never seen a case where whole life insurance made any sense and I've seen it go sideways numerous times on people. 90% of the time, the correct answer is a term life insurance policy. There are variable universal life and other types of policies that occasionally make sense, but 90% of the time, you're fine with a term policy.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Let's see. We had somebody ask here asking for a setting up a living trust and a will. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and connect her with you because I know you have somebody.
Yeah,
Um,
there are sites that you can do that. I strongly recommend not using a website and just hiring an attorney to do it because I've seen people mess themselves up bad trying to do a self will or a self living trust, and it didn't, they were dead, so they weren't there to correct the issue when it became apparent that there was a serious issue with this. It'll cost you a couple of $1,000, but it's worth it to just hire an attorney. And I do have a great attorney who did my trust and I've referred her to multiple clients who she's done a wonderful job in establishing a trust.
Wonderful. I'm 45, used all of my savings to close off my mortgage, which is great, but I now have no savings or emergency funds. It looks like I may have to buy into a bigger house in the next 5 years due to family expansion, and my partner doesn't currently work. What would you recommend to improve my financial position? Feel like we're on a
I,
Dave Ramsey show here.
yeah, that's a tough one. I would never advise to take all the savings and pay off a home because of the situation that you're in. People's situations change in a blink of an eye, and then all of a sudden they're house rich and cash poor. Um, Taking out the equity of the home is probably not an option because interest rates are sky high. Um, it's just going to be tight for a while. Like your partner, I'm assuming they can't go to work because they're with child. But if I could go back in time, I would tell you do not take all your cash and pay off that home because of the situation that you're in. So yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, there are no more questions. That'll be our final question for today. You have Robin's contact info. It'll be here. It's here in the webinar chat and in the video here later on YouTube where we'll have it. Oh gosh, do you recommend indexed universal life insurance? We'll make that the final question.
Um, it honestly, no,
No.
no. And it's a long explanation why. If you're thinking about getting an index universal life policy, I would definitely Google it and go to YouTube and see what people are saying. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts with those contracts. They're extremely complicated and they often cap your returns.
Awesome. So that'll be the final question. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to Robin. She's available through her LinkedIn, through her YouTube channel, and through her website. We
Mhm.
hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Robin, thank you so much for your time again. It's so great to have you here answering so many questions from our audience, and we hope to have you back again soon.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Albert. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. And for everyone else, we have plenty of other events coming up. Please go to our Eventbrite page, Meetup, or where you found us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.